It's been a while since we got any major Resident Evil news, which is kind of strange considering how many rumored projects are supposedly in the works. However, now that Capcom has finished the development on Monster Hunter Wilds, I really believe that we are going to start hearing more about Resident Evil soon. So, as we wait for Capcom to finally reveal what's next, I want to break down everything we know so far about the future of the series, and it doesn't just include games. If you want to hear more about what's next for Resident Evil and how it will impact the future of the franchise, make sure to stick around until the end of the video. Before I get into what we know about the future entries in the franchise, let's take a moment to look at where we currently are with the series. The last mainline Resident Evil game, Resident Evil Village, was released in 2021 and concluded the Ethan Winters saga, with the Shadows of Rose DLC serving as an epilogue for that storyline. In 2023, we got the last Resident Evil game, specifically the Resident Evil 4 remake, which gained plenty of awards and was even claimed by many to be the best Resident Evil game in the series. During the Capcom Next showcase last year, we received an official confirmation from one of the devs that a new game in the franchise is in the works. Ever since then, the company has been very quiet about the series, likely due to Monster Hunter Wilds being deep in development. However, now that it fully released a couple of months ago, it is very likely that Capcom's focus has shifted to the next Resident Evil title, and we might even get an update as soon as Summer Game Fest in June. So that leaves the question, what is next for the series? Are we finally getting a Resident Evil 9 announcement sometime soon? Or maybe another remake of a mainline game like Resident Evil 5? Let's take a look at some of the available information from insiders and leakers that could hint at where the series is headed next. Certain sources claim that there could be multiple Resident Evil games in development, but I want to focus on the one that likely will release next, specifically Resident Evil 9. According to multiple leakers, the game will feature Leon Kennedy as the main protagonist and take place on a remote island in Southeast Asia that's said to resemble Singapore. The story supposedly centers around Leon traveling to the mysterious island to investigate the company that created Evelyn in Resident Evil 7. The group is now experimenting with mass bioweapon production using the Mega Mycete, which we last saw at the end of Resident Evil Village. One of the main villains is rumored to be a man named Mr. Simon, who oversees the production of the bioweapons on the island. The setting and tone of Resident Evil 9 are set to lean heavily into the supernatural and folklore-inspired horror. Leaks mention that some locations will include an abandoned hospital, caves, deserted houses, labs, dark forests, and temples, suggesting a proper return to a classic survival horror. Enemies are rumored to include a stalker enemy that some claim to be a Wendigo and another referred to as the Goatman, giving the game a darker and more psychological vibe compared to the recent entries. Now, initially it was claimed that Jill Valentine would also return as a co-protagonist, but it was later debunked, so her involvement remains uncertain. That said, it has been over a decade since her last appearance in Resident Evil 5, and many fans are hoping for her return. Additionally, Blue Umbrella is expected to play a large role in the story, which may hint at another appearance from Chris Redfield. Potentially even his last, as some rumors suggest that the game could wrap up his character arc. The game has had the longest development cycle in the franchise, allegedly starting as early as 2018. The leaks claim that the reason the game is taking so long to release is because it aims to reinvent the series, similar to how Resident Evil 7 did it, with one of the biggest changes being the introduction of an open world. Obviously, this is a big shift from the more linear style that Resident Evil is known for. While a fully open world format, like we often see in RPGs, might not suit the series, RE Village already experimented with larger zones, so we might see a refined version of that approach. If you've played Jedi Fallen Order or its sequel, the game features multiple planets that act as semi-open hub worlds. The story is fairly linear, but it makes you revisit areas throughout the story, each time unlocking new paths and secrets as the game progresses. I think Resident Evil 9 could definitely benefit from a similar approach and still maintain that strong narrative flow. Another point that I want to talk about, and that I think might be key for the games going forward, is the game's camera perspective. Resident Evil 7 introduced first-person gameplay, which was a great choice as it enhanced immersion and horror. Village continued this, but also added a third-person mode to give the player more choice. However, the Shadows of Rose DLC was third-person only, which makes me wonder what direction Capcom will take in Resident Evil 9. Personally, I think the ideal solution would be to include both perspectives, giving players the freedom to choose. However, given the game's rumored heavy focus on horror, a default first-person perspective would make the most sense, and likely would be the best fit. Now, the question is, When will we see the official confirmation of the game? With Monster Hunter Wilds now released, I believe Capcom will fully shift their resources and marketing toward their new big project. The leaks claim that the release date will be sometime in 2026, and if that's true, then we should expect a reveal during Summer Game Fest in June or another major event around that time, like the State of Play or maybe a Capcom showcase. But Resident Evil 9 is likely not the only project Capcom is working on. The success of recent Resident Evil remakes has made them a gold standard in the industry. The Resident Evil 2 remake in 2019 was a massive hit, modernizing the classic while also staying true to the original. While Resident Evil 3 Remake received mixed reviews due to its cut content, Resident Evil 4 Remake was another major success, even with its shift from horror to a more action-focused gameplay. Some fans even consider it superior to the original. With these remakes performing so well, it is only natural for Capcom to revisit more of the classic titles and make them more accessible for fans on modern consoles. The most requested remake by fans is Resident Evil Code Veronica. Originally released in 2000, it followed Claire and Chris Redfield. According to a leaker, Das Golem, a remake of the game is indeed in development, though it's expected to be smaller in scale than Resident Evil 4 Remake. I think it doesn't come as a surprise, given that Resident Evil 4 is such a legendary title and its remake was going to be ambitious, but I hope it doesn't result in content being cut, like with RE3. Interestingly, Capcom also shut down a fan-made Code Veronica remake back in 2022, which could be a sign that they are working on an official version. While there hasn't been a formal announcement yet, it is likely to arrive way after Resident Evil 9. Das Golem also hinted that a Resident Evil 0 remake is in development alongside Code Veronica. Despite being remastered in 2016, the game could definitely benefit from a modern reimagining, especially as it is the prequel to the entire series. The post-credit scene in Resident Evil 3 Remake may have even teased the return of its protagonist, Rebecca Chambers. If the leaks are accurate, then the remake is scheduled to be released sometime in 2027 or 2028. Lastly, the next game that will almost certainly get remade down the line is Resident Evil 5. After remaking 2, 3 and 4, continuing with 5 would be the only natural next step. The Separate Ways DLC for Resident Evil 4 Remake even set up Albert Wesker, who is the main antagonist of Resident Evil 5. That said, the game is a bit controversial due to its heavy focus on action gameplay. Capcom could stick to the same tone and simply modernize the mechanics, or they might choose to rework it with more of a survival horror focus, which many fans would prefer. A couple of months ago, Resident Evil 5 also received an ESRB rating for Xbox Series consoles, which could hint at a next-gen port, a remaster, or maybe even a proper remake. I think it is too early to say for sure, but it's clear something is in the works. Whether it's a remake or not, fans should expect some clarification in the near future. But games aren't just the only future of Resident Evil. Just a few months ago, it was confirmed that a new live-action Resident Evil movie is in development, set to release on September 18th, 2026. The film will be directed by Zach Cregger, who also is known for The Barbarian, a horror movie that I personally really enjoyed. What's exciting is that the project will be a reboot of the franchise. Cregger has mentioned that he hasn't watched any of the previous Resident Evil adaptations, wanting to keep his story close to the original games. He also mentioned that Resident Evil 2, 4 and 7 are his favorite entries in the series, meaning that we will likely be getting a proper horror experience. Rumors suggest that the film might adapt the events of Resident Evil 1, which would make sense given that it is a reboot. So far, we haven't received any official casting announcements, but once the main characters are revealed, we will likely get a better idea of what storyline it will follow. Now, this actually could be a very important moment for the franchise. With most recent live-action shows and movies being way below expectations for many reasons, fans are waiting for a proper Resident Evil movie that features iconic characters and, most importantly, a truly immersive horror atmosphere. Hopefully, the new movie will deliver just that, and honestly, given the director's track record with horror, I am very optimistic. But that's the end of the video. Let me know in the comments what excites you the most about the future of Resident Evil. If you enjoyed the video and want to see more gaming content, leave a like and subscribe. Thanks for watching, and I hope to see you in the next one.